Hello, students. Welcome to this week's lecture. This concludes our personal narrative unit. This is the second lecture on narrative elements that you can incorporate into your paper in order to make it shine. The first thing that I'm going to be talking about today is the structure of your personal narrative essay. This will be a reminder from last week's lecture. And then I'm going to go over a couple of figurative language devices that you can use in order to make your writing pop, followed by word choice and what that means as far as a personal narrative. And then I'm going to talk about what goes into creating an excellent narrative conclusion and what goes into making an excellent title. Let's get started. As I mentioned before, for this particular assignment, you can throw the notion of the 5-paragraph essay totally away. You can use as many paragraphs, as many sentences as you want. Just keep in mind two things. Paragraphs do typically consist of 3 to 5 sentences. This hasn't changed from previous English classes that you've taken. I say this just because you want to make sure that a paragraph doesn't take up an entire page of your essay. That can be really distracting for your reader. Also, essays in general, including this one, have an introduction, body, and conclusion. It just looks a little bit different because of the format. The introduction you can consider to be the exposition, as you did with your plotline activity. The body consists of the rising action, the climax, and the falling action. Finally, you're going to end with your conclusion, which is the resolution, in which you give a reflection about your experience. Sometimes the falling action can factor into this just because it happens so quickly, and that's okay. All right, so let's dive into figurative language and making your writing really pop. This can also be found on pages 43 to 44 of your e-text. I've given you a couple of different devices that I consider to be the most common. However, your e-text has a lot more, so make sure to go ahead and check that out. In the top left-hand corner, I have a simile, which you've probably used before. You probably already know what it is. It is a comparative tool that uses like or as in order to make a description, such as, life is like a camera. Metaphor is also a comparative description. It accomplishes the same thing. It just doesn't use like or as. So you could say, life is a game. In the bottom left-hand corner here, I have hyperbole, which is a complete exaggeration, and I've been guilty of using this even in daily conversations. For example, my feet are killing me. I have been known to say that after walking all day at Disney or something like that. Are my feet actually killing me? No, I'm just making an exaggeration. And that's a really fun one to use with your personal writing. And then finally, I have onomatopoeia here, which is a word that is based on a sound. Students have had a lot of fun using this particular language device in the past for the personal narrative essay. Here I have Robin of Batman and Robin punching a villain, and the sound that might come out of that might be pow. You can also use dialogue in order to enhance your story and bring your audience into it with you. There are 2 different types of dialogue that you can use. The first is external dialogue, and you're probably used to seeing this in stories and novels. For example, I like writing, Harry announced. Well, I love writing, Hermione insisted. Here I have the dialogue that is being spoken out loud by the particular character alongside a speech tag. The other device that I can use is internal dialogue. Sometimes this is known as an internal monologue, where you put your thoughts literally on paper. I like writing, I realized as I finished the last sentence of my Fabulous 5. Typically, when you are giving an internal monologue, you're putting your thoughts to paper, it is italicized. So you can definitely see the difference between the two. And both are very helpful for your writing. Okay, so let's take a second to talk about word choice. A lot of students in the past have worried about, am I saying the right thing? Am I using the right word for this? The chances are you probably are, as long as you're being descriptive. That's what matters most when it comes to this assignment. Here I have some examples of some mediocre sentences that I can transform into better sentences using sensory words, figurative language, and the like. For example, I could just say that this particular character had black hair. Yeah, that's being somewhat descriptive to my audience, but let's make it even more descriptive. She had jet black hair that cascaded down her back. Ooh, all of a sudden, my audience can better visualize this person in my story. Or instead of just saying, I said something funny, you could say, I sent my audience into uproarious laughter. Again, more visualization, much, much better. Or instead of just telling me Maggie was smart, you could say with a metaphor that Maggie was the brightest bulb in the box. As long as you're being as descriptive and as detailed as possible, your personal narrative will be awesome, I promise. Okay, so how do we put all of these things that we've learned in this lecture together? Well, first you need to think about your audience and what you want them to feel, and you are going to show versus tell. This is an example of that. Let's say I want my audience to feel exhilarated about my walkabout in South Africa. Well, instead of saying, I felt nervous about the walkabout, that's more telling than showing, right? What if I said, boom, 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 boom. My heart was leaping out of my chest as I approached our guide. Ooh, with that onomatopoeia, with that description, all of a sudden the audience can feel what I'm feeling, and hopefully they feel exhilarated. Or instead of just saying that hearing the lions was very exciting, maybe I transport my audience into my story by saying, as I heard the first roar from 30 feet away, my lip began to tremble and the pit of my stomach churned. Oh no, what was happening? Okay, so I've put in a little internal dialogue there as well in order to engage my audience a little bit more. Then we have your conclusion. After you've incorporated all of those beautiful narrative elements, you are left with a reflection of your experience and everything that you've described. So again, the conclusion is considered to be the resolution, and you can possibly incorporate your following action into this. Typically, it's actually not very long. Sometimes students think it has to be this really big deal, and it's not. Maybe think about incorporating 3 to 5 sentences in which you provide a detailed reflection of your experience. And I want you to think big. Why does this story matter to me and my audience? Remember how I went on a walkabout in South Africa, and that's what I want my personal narrative to be about. But it's not just about me. By the end of that experience, I was hoping that everybody in the entire world had the chance to visit South Africa because of how beautiful it was. And so I want to make sure that I am including those feelings in my reflection or my conclusion. And remember, by the time that I, your instructor, am done reading this, I don't want to be asking myself, so what? Why did I bother to read this today? You have to think about the big picture, which is all about the purpose of your writing. And then finally, I want to conclude with titles. Sometimes students like to put their title first. That's the first thing that they think about before they even start writing their essay. And that's totally fine. You can do that. I have found that as a writer, usually titles actually come last, just because I like to look at what I'm writing. After I've written it, I like to see exactly what my story is about. What's important for titles is that they follow what I consider to be the 3 S's. They have to be snappy, short, and succinct. I'm going to give you some examples in order to help you visualize this a little bit better. Okay, so here I have 5 different examples. Let's run through them together. The first is personal narrative essay. Yikes, I'm not really interested in reading that. Also, I have 20 other personal narrative essays that I'm reading. So what makes this special? I don't know. Better move on. Number 2, roommates from hell. Ooh, that's intriguing. I know what the story's going to be about, roommates, and then clearly there seems to be a terrible experience here. Tell me more. Okay, so this one works. Number 3, the one where I went to Japan, my life according to a friend's episode. Okay, that's cute. That's clever. It's just way too long. We need to make sure to shorten that. Number 4, lions, tigers, and bears. Oh, my Canada. I really like this one. So clearly it's going to be about some kind of experience that happened in Canada, and they're using a little cliche from The Wizard of Oz. So I like that. Number 5, changing. Okay, that's a little bit too broad for me. I have no idea what your story is going to be about. And, I'm just really not intrigued to learn more. So we can skip that. Number 2 and number 4 seem to be the winners here. Okay, that's all I have for you on this lecture for narrative elements. If you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to shoot me an email. Otherwise, I will see you next time.